He awoke to silence. At first he thought the stillness might be a blessing. No distant salvo, no crack of rifle fire, no shouts of orders or agony. But as consciousness returned, he felt instead the weight of emptiness, a presence more oppressive than any bombardment. The world around him was indistinct, swallowed by a white haze that pressed close, inching into his lungs with every breath. He could taste frost on his tongue and the faint tang of iron, as though the air itself remembered blood. He tried to rise but found his limbs heavy, unresponsive, as though dragged by unseen weights. Memories surfaced in disjointed fragments. The roar of artillery, the flash of flame against rubble, the desperate scramble through collapsing corridors, letters never delivered, faces he would never see again. Yet here, in this unnatural calm, the past refused to recede into forgetfulness. Instead, it rippled beneath the fog, each memory a ghost tugging at him. He looked down and saw his uniform stiff with ice, the greatcoat's folds frozen into unnatural angles. His helmet lay nearby, half buried in snow that drifted in silent waves across shattered streets. A rifle, its wooden stock splintered, rested within reach. But the world was not safe. The stillness itself felt alive, watching him. Somewhere beyond the mist, shapes shifted. A bell tolled distantly, though no tower stood intact. He was alone, yet not alone. The ruins whispered. He forced himself upright, breath clouding before him, and began to move. Each footstep on debris-crusted ground grated like broken glass. He felt his heartbeat thrumming in ears dulled by cold. He tried to orient himself. North, south. He hardly remembered how he arrived here, only that survival had become meaningless once the siege ended and the survivors vanished. Now he wandered in a half-world where time had fractured. Dawn and dusk no longer mattered. Only the fog stretched onward, endless. As he walked, he sensed eyes in every ruin, in every hollow. In the flicker of moonlight, or what passed for moonlight here, he glimpsed silhouettes behind broken walls. He told himself they were memories or tricks of light on frost. Yet sometimes he swore he heard footsteps in the haze, echoing his own, though no shape ever emerged. The wind stirred, a whisper of voices, half-formed phrases that vanished when he leaned closer. Comrade, home, forgive me, or were those his own regrets speaking? He could not tell. He paused at the edge of a crater, its rim jagged like a wound. In its depths, a patch of deeper darkness yawned as though the earth itself had opened. Cold mist billowed upward, curling around his boots. He knelt to inspect. Bits of broken glass, fragments of photographs frozen into ice, a cracked helmet bearing a red star, barely visible beneath frost. He touched the glass. It was colder than the surrounding air, unnatural. And in it he thought he saw a face, his face, gaunt, hollow-eyed, staring back at him. He recoiled, but the image lingered as though tethered to his soul. Night and day blurred. He continued, driven by a compulsion he could not name, to confront something unseen or to escape it. The ruins stretched endlessly, crumbling walls, twisted beams, collapsed bell towers jutting into the gloom. Sometimes he found a shattered mirror or a piece of polished metal in the rubble. Whenever he glimpsed his reflection, it felt wrong. Eyes too bright, skin too pale, expression too vacant. He began to dread these reflections, yet he could not turn away, as though each told a truth he needed to face. The ruined avenues of Stalingrad sprawled beneath the fog like broken veins on an immense, frozen body. The city, once throbbing with life, had been ground to dust. Now it lay half-drowned in mist, as though the earth itself sought to erase its scars. He wandered these silent streets, shell-choked thoroughfares where once civilians crowded markets and children played. Now, only snow and silence remained. He passed battered facades, walls pocked by shellfire, windows shattered into ragged frames. Tattered curtains fluttered in the wind, ghostly banners of a vanished world. On the ground lay abandoned belongings, A shoe, a child's toy, a shattered photograph of smiling faces, now faded and half-buried. Each relic stirred something in him, a pang of guilt, a dull ache of memory, a nameless sorrow. But he pressed on. To linger meant drowning in regret. The fog thickened with every step, swallowing landmarks. He moved by instinct, toward where he thought the river Volga might lie, though he no longer trusted direction. The once mighty waterway was hidden beneath swirling mists, its banks lost. Occasionally, he glimpsed a bridge's skeletal remains jutting from the haze, pillars broken, girders twisted. Beneath, a darker void hinted at the river's flow, but no sound reached him. Only the soft exhalation of fog. In this realm, visibility never exceeded a few paces. He learned to feel rather than see. The shift of wind patterns, the texture of ground underfoot, the faint resonance of distant echoes. Sometimes the mist would part briefly, revealing a crater or a fallen statue of Lenin, head severed, staring into nothingness. In those moments, the past and present collided. He remembered seeing similar statues in better times, gatherings of workers, hopeful slogans painted on walls. Now those walls harbored only rot and frost. At one intersection, he discovered an overturned cart, its wheels twisted. Beside it lay a helmet and a rifle. The rifle's barrel pointed skyward, rimed with ice. He recognized its model, a Mosin Nagant standard issue. He touched it gingerly. Rust and frost made it brittle. He lifted the helmet. Inside, dried blood and frost melded into a grotesque tableau. He lowered it. The weight of these artifacts reminded him that men had died here, countless, anonymous, swallowed by war and now by this spectral aftermath. He pressed on and found a narrow alley between collapsed buildings, the fog heavier here, as though drawn into the void between walls. He instinctively held his breath, footsteps muffled on icy cobblestones. The alley ended at a shattered storefront, remains of civilian life, pots, pans, a broken sign reading "Ka el be," bread, half buried in snow. He paused, sensing movement in the haze beyond. He spun, rifle raised, but saw nothing, only mist. He exhaled and the fog swirled, revealing nothing but emptiness. Yet he felt it, a presence just beyond perception, watching. He moved on, uncertain if he sought escape or confrontation. The boundaries between reality and imagination blurred. Sometimes he encountered pools of standing water, frozen over, reflecting the ashen sky. In them, he glimpsed more than his reflection, fleeting images of comrades, of battle's fury, of screaming faces. He recoiled, shaking his head. He insisted these were illusions, war's ghosts. But some nights, as he slept uneasily beneath broken beams or collapsed roofs, he heard distant laughter or sobbing, as though the city itself mourned. He discovered, in the depths of the ruins, an underground corridor, a fragment of a bunker or shelter. The entrance gaped like a wound, stairs descending into pitch. He hesitated. Cold fog curled around the opening as though urging him downward. He recalled days spent huddled underground, waiting for the next barrage. The memory was raw, claustrophobic darkness, the stench of sweat and fear, the faint hope that dawn might bring relief. Yet dawn had brought only more destruction. He lit a match, if matches could still light in this unnatural cold, and descended. The walls were damp, covered in mold and frost. Stretcher frames lay collapsed, rusted medical tools half buried in ice. He found scrawled messages on walls, names, dates, pleas for mercy, declarations of loyalty scrawled by trembling hands. "Vera, I love you. If I die, remember me. Forgive me, mother." These echoed through him like bells tolling. He traced letters with a gloved finger, feeling the rough surface. Known souls had passed here. He felt their longing. Deeper, he encountered a chamber with remnants of cots, frozen shapes draped in tattered blankets. He sensed movement at the edge of vision, but when he turned, only frost-laden air remained. His breath formed clouds that drifted like spirits. He lay on one cot briefly, cold seeping into bone, and drifted into a fitful sleep, dreaming he walked a corridor lit by flickering lamps, his comrades' faces flickering on walls, mouths moving but no sound coming. He woke with a start, match extinguished, heart pounding. He rose and left the bunker as though fleeing a dream he could not endure. Above ground again, the fog seemed thicker, pressing more insistently. He thought, perhaps the underground was less haunted, yet he did not return, fearing deeper revelations. Instead, he circled the perimeter of the ruins, noting pockets where the mist thinned. In those brief clearings, he glimpsed shapes, a collapsed bell tower here, a mangled statue there. Each revealed war's toll in brutal clarity. But as fog swallowed them again, the images became wraith-like, reminders that the past refused to settle. He often spoke aloud, to dispel isolation, reciting poems he remembered, mumbling fragments of songs from childhood, greeting imaginary comrades. His own voice startled him, echoing oddly in the fog. Sometimes he believed an answer came, a faint echo or a whisper riding the wind. He convinced himself it was simply acoustics, wind through ruins, but the effect unnerved him. Was he truly alone? Or had the line between life and death dissolved in this spectral landscape? One night, he found a shattered window frame overlooking a courtyard. Moonlight, pale and diffuse, filtered through broken glass, illuminating frost crystals on the ground. In the courtyard lay helmets and rifles half buried in snow, arranged in no order, discarded remnants of battles fought. He stepped into the courtyard. A sudden gust stirred the fog. For a moment he thought he saw figures rising from the ground, soldiers, their faces gaunt, eyes hollow, staring at him. His heart leapt. He fired a shot into the mist, cracking the silence. No figure remained, only swirling fog. He realized, even fear here had become a hollow echo. He began to seek mirrors or reflective surfaces, drawn by a compulsion he barely understood. In one ruined building, he found fragments of a mirror, jagged shards scattered on the floor. He gathered them carefully, cradling each in his gloved hands. The reflections were distorted. The face which peered back at him was at once himself and something other, eyes too bright, skin too pale, expression unreadable. He stumbled backward as if struck, shards clinking in his hand. He tried to look away but couldn't. The mirror demanded recognition. He arranged shards upright in the snow outside, forming a half circle. He stood at the center, fog swirling around him. Each shard reflected a twisted facet. In one he saw himself as a hero, proud and resolute. In another as a broken man, haunted and hollow. In several as grotesque caricatures, grinning, screaming, contorted. He felt vertigo. These reflections seemed realer than his own face, as though he had splintered into multiple selves. He wondered, was he all of these at once, or had the fog revealed hidden truths? He heard a whisper, faint, like wind through old pipes but carrying words. Choose, return, remember. He spun, peering into the haze but saw only drifting mist. His breathing quickened. He raised his rifle, aiming at nothing. The world felt fracturing. He pressed a hand to his helmet. The red star was chipped, frost-crusted, but still visible, a reminder of loyalty, ideology, home. Yet in the mirrors, even the star was warped, sometimes blotched, sometimes shining too brightly, sometimes missing. He realized that everything here, identity, memory, loyalty, was mutable at the mercy of the fog's distortions. He spent days in this ritual, gathering shards, arranging them, confronting reflections. Each time the images shifted. Sometimes he felt the shards carried pieces of souls, a soldier's regret, a comrade's fear, a civilian's sorrow, echoing within his own psyche. He tried smashing a shard, watching it shatter further, but new fragments appeared in the snow as though the landscape conjured them. He tried discarding them into craters or crevices, only to find them the next day, glinting in the mist. He began to suspect that the fog itself had a will, feeding on remembrance, forging illusions to trap him in endless introspection. He realized, too, that looking into the shards forced him to recall events he had long repressed, moments of cowardice, choices that haunted him, times when he could not save others. He saw the faces of comrades he had left behind. He saw civilians he had failed to protect. Each reflection seemed to accuse him. "You survived. Why them not you?" He recoiled but could not escape. The ruins offered no respite. Every corner held another mirror, another memory waiting to surface. On a night when the fog lay thickest, so dense that even his outstretched hand vanished within a few paces, he heard a bell toll. It was faint, yet unmistakable, resonating through the haze like a summons. He froze, straining to locate the source. No intact bell tower remained visible. All had crumbled, yet the toll persisted, echoing at irregular intervals. 1, pause 2, pause 3. The sound was distant, ethereal, almost underwater. It felt as though the city itself rang the bell for the dead. He followed the sound, stumbling through deep drifts of snow and rubble. The toll guided him toward what had been the city center. Buildings loomed like sleeping giants in the fog. Some still stood upright in skeletal form. Others collapsed into mounds. He passed a collapsed cathedral. Its roof caved in, stained glass windows shattered, but the bell tower's silhouette remained faintly visible behind haze. He climbed precariously over fallen beams, guided by the toll's rhythm. At the tower's base, he found a crater where the tower had partially collapsed. The toll grew clearer here. Though no bell hung, the sound emanated from within the crater's depths, as if from an unseen mechanism. He knelt at the rim. Inside lay broken bells, half buried in ice and debris. One intact bell lay on its side, its clapper frozen in place. The rest were shattered. Yet when he tapped the intact bell lightly, it emitted the same spectral toll he had followed. He recoiled. The sound seemed to come not from the bell but from the fog itself, using the bell as conduit. He lifted the bell upright. It was surprisingly warm in his gloved hands, as though alive. He sensed pressure at his back, the fog swirling upward, clustering around the bell. He struck it gently. Tone was hollow, mournful. The fog parted slightly, revealing figures at the edge of perception. Silhouettes of soldiers, some in Soviet uniform, some in German, mixed together in a circle around the crater, motionless. He blinked and they vanished. He realized they were memories, echoes of those who had died here, bound to this place. He swallowed, heart pounding. Could he ring the bell? What would happen? If he did, would it summon more apparitions? Or might it break the spell, disperse the fog? He raised the bell and struck it firmly. The toll resonated through the ruins, rolling outward like waves. The fog shuddered, shapes coalesced briefly, soldiers reaching out, faces contorted in silent screams, then dissolved. A gust of wind swept through, carrying voices, a cacophony of farewells, regrets, pleas. He covered his ears, but the sound rattled his mind. When he opened his eyes, the bell lay shattered in his hands, shards of metal and frost scattering into the snow. The toll ceased. Silence returned, deeper than before. He felt unmoored, as though released from one prison only to fall into another. The shards glinted at his feet, reflecting the pale light through fog. He picked up a piece. Polished edge caught a flicker of movement, his reflection or another. He looked around. The ruins remained, silent and watching. He left the crater and descended the tower remains. The toll might have ended, but its echo persisted within him, a reminder that the dead had not found rest, and perhaps he, too, would not. As days passed, though in this place days had little meaning, he encountered more apparitions. Sometimes they were fleeting, a glimpse of a comrade's uniform drifting through fog, only to vanish when he approached. Other times more insistent, he heard voices calling his name, soft but urgent, beckoning him toward ruined buildings. When he entered, he found empty rooms where a sudden coldness pressed in, and he felt unseen hands brush his shoulder. He spun, rifle aimed, but only fog remained. One encounter, he stumbled into what had once been a field hospital. The walls were collapsed, stretchers lay frozen, bodies long since decayed or removed. Yet in the haze he saw shapes lying on cots, soldiers with open eyes staring upward, skin pale and frosted. Surgical tools lay on tables, rust and ice fused. He moved among them, feeling the weight of their gaze even though they were corpses. He heard faint breathing, his own, or theirs. He reached out to close an open eye, but the body dissolved into fog at his touch. He recoiled, heart hammering. Then he heard a soft voice. "Finish what you started." He turned, but no one stood there. The voice belonged to no living soul. Perhaps it was memory, guilt speaking. Another time he found a cracked mirror in a half-collapsed house. The reflection showed not one but two versions of himself, one haunted and hollow, the other spectral, pale-eyed. He realized he had seen that image before in shards, but now it emerged full length as though the mirror was a portal. He felt drawn forward but recoiled. The reflection mouthed words he could not hear. Something in his mind answered, a question of identity, of purpose. In that moment he felt both himself and not himself. He smashed the mirror and the image shattered into fragments that rained down like snow. The mist swallowed them instantly. He began to wonder, was the fog alive? Did it create these visions to torment him? Or was he projecting his own psyche onto the ruins? He tried to reason. War had broken men's minds. Perhaps he wandered in some delirium, stuck between life and death, memory and oblivion. Yet the sensations were too vivid. The sting of frost on skin, the echo of bells, the weight of guilt pressing like an invisible hand. He could not dismiss the reality of suffering he felt here. He kept a crude journal in his mind, notes of encounters, sketches of shapes seen in fog, fragments of overheard whispers. This mental record was his anchor to sanity, yet each entry also deepened his entanglement. Every detail tethered him further to the ruined landscape. He realized that to break free, he must confront the heart of this place, face whatever lay beyond the fog's illusions. He recalled a rumor. Beneath the city lay catacombs or subterranean passages, a network of shelters and tunnels. Some said that in these depths the dead lingered. Others believed that beneath the ruins lay the truths of the siege, recorded in graffiti in hidden diaries, in tunnels untouched by surface blasts. He resolved to descend once more, seeking perhaps an explanation or an escape. He located an entrance, a collapsed stairwell half hidden by rubble. Descending was treacherous, ice-coated steps, loose stones. His matches burned low. The air grew stale, heavier, as if burdened by ages of suffering. Walls bore inscriptions, names carved by trembling hands, pleas for water, messages to loved ones. He paused to read. "Anatoly, forgive me, brother. Mother, if you find this, know I tried." The sorrow accumulated, suffocating. Yet he pressed onward, deeper. In the gloom, he found a chamber lit by phosphorescent moss, an unnatural glow that revealed a cluster of makeshift cots, some empty, some bearing skeletal remains frozen in place. Tools lay scattered, surgical instruments, cooking pots, scraps of cloth. The stench of decay mingled with damp earth. He felt watched. Shadows flickered on walls, though no flame burned here. At the chamber's far end, a doorway led to a narrow corridor. From within came a low hum, like distant chanting or the drone of insects. But his mind translated it as voices, prayers for salvation, curses at fate. He gripped his rifle, advanced. The corridor narrowed until he had to stoop. Ice dripped from roof onto his helmet. The hum grew louder, rhythmic, a chant in unknown tongues, echoing through stone. He emerged into a circular chamber. In its center stood a crude altar made of rubble and twisted metal. Upon it lay a tattered banner, half-burned cloth bearing a faded hammer and sickle. Around the altar, arranged in a ring, were artifacts, helmets, rifles, personal items, each encased in frost. The hum emanated from here, vibrating through the ground. He felt it in his bones. He approached the altar. The banner fluttered though no wind blew. Frost on its edges shifted as though alive. He knelt and touched the banner. In his mind, a vision, a flash of battle, the city aflame, comrades falling, himself shouting orders, then silence. He lurched upright, breath ragged. The chamber glowed brighter. Moss illuminated the walls, revealing fresco-like markings, images of soldiers marching into fog, faces half hidden, reaching hands. The frescoes depicted an unending procession, men entering fog-laden streets, never returning, their forms dissolving into mist. He recognized himself among them, endless iterations of his own figure, each stepping forward and vanishing. The hum became a roar, a chorus of voices rising in lament. He covered his ears, but the sound penetrated. He realized the chamber held the collective memory of all who perished, their regrets, hopes, fears, bound to this subterranean sanctum. He felt their sorrow merge with his own. He struggled to maintain identity. Was he an individual or part of this mass? He raised his rifle and fired at the altar. The blast echoed fiercely, dust and frost raining down. The banner fell, revealing a hollow beneath, an opening leading deeper, blacker. He considered descending further, but fear seized him. What lay beyond? Another chamber of horrors, or perhaps a path to release? He hesitated. The voices seemed to urge, descend, remember, forget. Conflicting impulses warred within. He realized that staying too long meant losing himself. Yet leaving meant carrying these ghosts back into the world, if there was any world left outside. He stepped back, retrieving the banner fragment. With a final glance at the altar, he retraced steps upward. As he ascended, the hum faded into echoes. The corridor walls seemed less oppressive. When he emerged into the fog above, he felt disoriented, daylight or night. The mist obscured all. He clutched the banner fragment as both talisman and burden. The subterranean would remain with him, its song echoing in his mind. After the descent, his perception shifted. The fog seemed denser, charged with unseen currents. He dreamed vividly. He saw himself in trenches. He saw himself wandering these ruins. He saw himself in the subterranean chamber, over and over, looping. Upon waking, if this place allowed waking, he questioned whether he had slept or merely drifted in a trance. The line between dream and reality blurred. He wandered to a high vantage, a collapsed rooftop giving a view of endless fog. From here, the city appeared as islands of ruin floating in white. He imagined it like a vast sea of ghosts, each ruin inhabited by memories. He felt vertigo, as though he might slip from a precipice into oblivion. He recalled the mirror shards, the subterranean altar, the tolling bell. All converged into a single piece. The city itself was a mirror, the fog a veil between worlds. In his solitude, he began to speak to the fog, addressing the unseen. He recited names of fallen comrades, apologizing, asking forgiveness. He asked why he remained, what purpose this wandering served. Sometimes the fog answered, a swirl that formed shapes, a whisper that felt like an embrace or a taunt. He could not tell if the responses were real or figments, yet each exchange left him changed, sometimes calmer, sometimes more haunted. He encountered a peculiar phenomenon, an area where the fog parted enough to reveal a straight path through ruins, as though leading somewhere. The path was lined with broken lampposts, their glass broken but faint glow shimmering. He felt drawn to follow it, as though destiny directed him. He stepped onto the path. The ruins on either side seemed to watch. He moved forward until the path ended at a large square, where a single intact statue stood, a soldier raising a flag. but the statue's face was blank, its features erased by time. Frost covered the flag's emblem, but he sensed it once bore promise. He reached out. The statue's hand was icy, unmoving. He realized the statue represented hope unfulfilled, erased by war. He turned away, path dissolving behind him into fog. He returned nightly to this square, each time finding subtle changes. The statue's flag more tattered, the remnants of footprints etched in snow, his own or someone else's. The fog swirling differently. He attempted to inscribe his name in snow at the statue's base, but the inscription vanished by morning as though the fog erased traces. He understood. This place would not let him leave a mark. And if he could not leave a mark, what was the point of existence here? One dawn-like moment. Though dawn was a pale concept here, he saw a figure in the mist, a Soviet soldier, uniform familiar, walking toward him. He froze. The figure paused. As it drew nearer, he saw the pale glow of eyes, an uncanny stillness in movement. It was him, yet not him. Features identical but expression empty, as though life drained. The doppelganger regarded him silently. He backed away slowly, rifle raised but uncertain. The reflection in a mirror shard came to mind, his haunted face and the ghostly twin. Now it stood before him, flesh and bone or smoke and memory, stepping from the mist. He called out, voice trembling. "Who are you?" No answer, only the faint echo of his own words. The twin raised a hand, pointing deeper into the ruins as though guiding or luring. He hesitated, follow or flee. His instinct screamed retreat, yet something urged him onward, perhaps a need to confront himself, to understand this apparition. He followed at a distance, through corridors of fog and rubble. The twin led him to places he recognized and others alien, a street where buildings he remembered once stood, then a yawning void where nothing remained. At each turn, the twin paused, waiting. Sometimes the fog formed shapes around them, echoes of past battles, silhouettes of comrades, civilians, enemies. The twin did not react, staring ahead with hollow gaze. Finally, they reached a collapsed theater, once a place of culture, now a tomb. The twin entered and he followed. Inside, seats lay buried in ash-like snow, stage collapsed. In the center, a reflective pool of water remained unfrozen, black as ink. The twin stood at its edge and looked into it. He approached, peering in. The reflection was maddening. Not only his own face, but countless variations swirling beneath the water's surface, faces contorted by fear, rage, sorrow, mania. He saw fragments of war's extremes, the dying, the deserter, the executioner, the witness. The twin gestured toward the pool as if to say, "Behold." He felt drawn in as though the water beckoned him to drown. He realized the doppelganger embodied his own fractured psyche, the sum of choices and traumas. To face it meant facing every guilt, fear, and regret. To reject it risked losing himself entirely. He set rifle aside, stepping closer. He peered into the pool and felt the cold sear through him. Images shifted swiftly. A comrade's smile, then bloodied. A civilian's pleading eyes. A battlefield aflame. A quiet village before war. A child's laughter followed by screams. He felt tears freeze on his cheeks. The twin remained motionless, witnessing his torment. At last he whispered, "I am you." The voice was his own, yet distant. He responded, "I know." He realized acceptance was necessary, that the horrors he saw were part of him and his history. He lowered his head, bowing to the reflection. The water stilled, faces receded, leaving only his own image, eyes red-rimmed. The twin stepped back, dissolving into fog. He felt emptiness and relief intertwined. He left the theater alone. The path back was easier, as though some burden lifted. Yet the fog still pressed around him. The ruins remained. He understood. Confronting the doppelganger did not free him from the fog, but changed his relation to it. The horrors were not strangers, but inhabit his own mind. and acceptance granted a measure of calm amid chaos. With new resolve, he sought an exit from the ruins. He believed somewhere beyond the fog lay open ground, perhaps the Volga's banks, perhaps fields less haunted. He retraced steps, following landmarks glimpsed earlier: a fallen church steeple, a cracked statue, the crater where the bell once tolled. At each point he checked for subtle changes. Had the fog thinned? The answer was always no, yet within himself he felt less fear. He crafted crude markers, stacking stones or placing shards of metal in patterns he recognized. These markers felt ephemeral. The fog often erased them, but he persisted, leaving small cairns along routes he hoped would lead outward. With each step, he recited memories, names of comrades, lines of poetry, prayers. He felt these utterances might repel the fog's illusions, anchoring him to a reality beyond this haunted city. One morning, or what he deemed morning, he reached what felt like the city's edge, a clearing where ruin gave way to open ground. The fog here swirled low, but beyond a certain point he sensed lighter air. He stepped forward. Snow gave way to marshy ground, reeds half frozen, water pooled in shallow basins. He followed a path through reeds, guided by instinct. In the distance he glimpsed the silhouette of the Volga's riverbank, though blurred by haze. Hope surged. As he approached the bank, the fog thickened again. He could barely see the river's current. He walked along the shore, water lapping unseen beneath mist. He called out, voice echoing, "Is anyone there?" Only the wind answered. He found driftwood and bodies of ice-encrusted debris, floating timbers, broken barges half submerged. On the shore lay helmets and rifles, remnants washed from the city. He picked up a helmet, turned it over. Inside, frost and ash. He set it down, continuing. He longed to leave, but the river's edge offered no clear crossing. Ice too thin to bear weight, water too dark to reveal depth. He felt trapped between ruin and river, both hostile. He considered building a raft from debris, but he doubted his strength and the mist concealed dangers. Yet turning back into the city felt like regression. He faced a choice: risk the river or remain wandering among ghosts. Determined, he gathered driftwood and broken planks from wreckage along the shore. He tied them with torn straps from his pack, fashioning a crude raft. Each piece was damp and frozen, his hands numb as he worked. The fog pressed in, chilling to the bone. He tested the raft's buoyancy, waded into icy water up to knees, then shivered as cold surged. He pushed the raft further. It held, though listing precariously. He knelt on the raft, gripping a broken oar fashioned from a plank. He pushed off the shore. The river was silent, no current visible but present, a hidden pull. The fog swallowed him as he drifted. He paddled slowly, direction uncertain. The riverbank receded into whiteness. Behind him, vague shapes of ruins faded. Ahead, nothing but mist. Fear rose. What if the river led only deeper into the unknown? Yet each stroke carried him away from the city's grip. Mid-crossing, he sensed movement beneath, currents swirling, pulling at the raft's underside. He paused, heart pounding. He peered into dark water, nothing visible. A sudden chill, the thought of submerged forms, bodies, debris, something else. He forced himself to paddle, eyes fixed on vague horizon. The raft groaned, water seeped through cracks. The cold numbed him further, but he pressed on, reciting names and prayers to maintain focus. Hours, or what felt like hours, passed. The fog began to thin imperceptibly. Shapes emerged, distant trees on opposite bank, a ragged landscape beyond. The river's width narrowed. He guided the raft toward shore. As he drew near, he saw footprints, recent or imagined. They led away from water's edge into a sparse woodland. He disembarked, legs unsteady. He left the raft to drift or sink. He turned back once. The river behind was veiled in mist. He could no longer see the ruins of Stalingrad. A pang of loss and relief welled within. He followed footprints into the woods. The trees were bare, blackened trunks reaching upward like skeletal arms. Snow lay thin, mist trailed among trunks. He moved cautiously, senses sharpened by months of vigilance. He discovered signs of other passage, broken branches, footprints, a torn piece of cloth snagged on a branch. He wondered who else wandered here, survivors, ghosts, something else. He pressed on, driven by hope of reaching safety, or simply escape from the city's grasp. After what felt like days in the woods, time was warped. He emerged onto a small road curling through a frozen landscape. The fog had lifted here, revealing a pale sky. No sound reached him but his own breathing. He looked around. Abandoned vehicles half buried, ruins of villages scorched by war, fields flattened. Yet the oppressive presence of the city's fog was absent. He felt relief and unease. Had he truly escaped or wandered into a new domain of ruin? He continued along the road, marking his path with scratches on bark. He found footprints in snow, perhaps recent, perhaps old. He followed them to a small settlement, houses largely intact but silent. Doors hung open, inside hearths cold, dishes left on tables. No sign of life, but evidence people had been here. He called out, no reply. In a dwelling, he discovered a diary fragment. Entry dated months after the siege ended, written by a wanderer searching for shelter. The writer spoke of strange fog in ruins, of voices calling from below, of mirror-like reflections in snow that revealed impossible images. The final line, if the world is broken, how to know which path returns to life and which leads deeper into oblivion? The fragment ended abruptly. He pocketed the diary piece. He felt kinship with the writer, another soul caught between hope and despair. He hoped to find survivors, yet each settlement remained empty. He realized war had not ended here either. The landscape bore scars everywhere. Still, the absence of the oppressive mist felt like freedom. He allowed himself small comforts, drinking melted snow, eating canned rations found in abandoned stores. He warmed his hands by a small fire, feeling flames that once were common but now rare. At night, the sky revealed stars undimmed by smoke. He gazed upward, recalling childhood tales of constellations. For a moment, he felt connected to a larger cosmos, beyond the ruined earth. Yet memories of the city lingered. The fog's whisper, mirror shards, subterranean hum. He feared forgetting, yet feared remembering too vividly. He wrote in the margin of the diary fragment, I walked through death and found life's faint glow. I fear both memory and oblivion. Despite daylight clarity, the horrors followed him in dreams. He saw the smoky ruins of Stalingrad, heard the tolling bell, felt the weight of ghostly eyes. In dreams, he returned to the mirror pool, confronted his doppelganger again. Sometimes he surrendered to panic, other times he accepted. He awoke each morning grateful for the real world, yet unease shadowed him. Was he truly free or a sleeper lost between worlds? He continued journeying along roads, seeking signs of organized survivors or aid. Occasionally, he found small clusters of people, ragged refugees huddled around fires, wary but alive. He offered greetings, shared rations. Their stories echoed his, the siege's horrors, losses, the lure of escape into memory's fog or the unknown. Together, they formed fragile communities, rebuilding trust. He helped repair shelters, scavenge supplies. In these interactions, he felt aspects of himself heal. Compassion returned, purpose re-emerged. Yet he never spoke of the city's specters, how to explain the fog that haunted him. Instead, he listened, learned, and offered what aid he could. Evenings, by campfires, he watched flames dance. He wondered, could he ever speak of what he truly experienced? Would others believe? He feared ridicule or pity. Instead, he encoded his memories in metaphor, writing sketches. A soldier in endless fog, a bell that tolled for no living, mirrors showing twisted selves. He shared these tales as allegory, cautionary fables about war's psychological toll. Some listeners shuddered. Others nodded in recognition of their own nightmares. He felt less alone. Time passed. Seasons changed. Snow thawed into slush, then new snow fell. Yet within him, the fog's echo persisted. He learned to carry it lightly. When darkness threatened to summon memories, he recited poems, sang folk songs, focused on tangible tasks, building shelters, tending fires, gathering wood. He kept small talismans, a fragment of mirror hidden in cloth, a piece of the banner from the subterranean altar, relics of his confrontation with the past. These he carried not as curses but reminders. Horror endured, lessons learned. He occasionally returned to the outskirts of the city's ruin, guided by old maps and instincts. He visited the riverbank where he built the raft, found remnants carried downstream. He searched for signs the terrain had settled, yet always found new shifts. Collapsed walls fell further, snowdrifts altered paths. Each visit felt less like a journey into madness, more like a pilgrimage, paying respects to those who perished, acknowledging the price of survival. One day, he found a group mapping the ruins methodically, engineers and survivors documenting remains for future reconstruction. He joined them briefly, guiding through treacherous areas he knew. He showed them markers he had left long ago, explaining pitfalls, unstable ground, pockets where fog lingered thickest. They listened with pragmatic resolve: rebuild, repurpose, memorialize. He felt hope stirring that the city's ruin might yield to renewal. Yet as spring thaw advanced, he noted that some areas refused thaw. Pockets of frost remained as though cold had taken root. In these he still sensed the lingering presence of the fog's domain. He advised caution. These zones required memorial markers. He helped establish monuments, simple crosses or plaques noting here lie unnamed souls. In ceremonies, survivors lit candles, held moments of silence. He stood among them, feeling both relief and sorrow. Relief that memory found recognition, sorrow that so many remained unnamed. In time, he realized his own journey neared a turning point. The soldier who wandered ruins, tormented by spectral echoes, had become a guide, storyteller, witness. He found purpose beyond mere survival, preserving memory so others would not forget war's horrors, ensuring the city's legacy encompassed both suffering and resilience. He wrote a longer account, carefully veiled as fiction, to share widely among survivors. It narrated a soldier's trek through endless fog, encounters with ghosts, mirror reflections, subterranean horrors. Yet it also chronicled survival, community, rebuilding. He hoped the allegory would reach hearts wary of confronting trauma directly. He circulated copies, read passages by firesides. Many wept, some resisted, but the story sparked dialogue, of grief, of healing, of memory's dual nature, both burden and guide. He visited the edge of the thawing ruins one final time. The fog was faint here, sunlight pierced mist in wavering beams. He walked among collapsed walls, paused at the crater where the bell lay shattered. He placed a simple wreath, entwined wildflowers and a tattered piece of cloth dyed red, tribute to those who had died. He rang a small handbell, its tones subdued in open air. No fog responded. Only wind carried echoes away. He closed his eyes, listened, not for ghosts but for his own breath, the rustle of thawing ice, distant bird calls, signs that life persisted. He reached the shattered mirror shards he once gathered. Now melted snow had dissolved most. A few lay embedded in mud. He retrieved one fragment, held it against light. He saw his reflection, weathered face, eyes steady, lines of grief etched but no longer hollow. He touched the shard and let it fall into melting water where it sank out of sight. He felt a release, not forgetting but integrating. The mirror no longer held power over him. He carried its lessons within. He turned and walked away from the ruins. The path led through budding trees, toward settlements rebuilding in the thawed fields. He carried the subterranean banner fragment in his pack, a reminder that beneath every ruin lies memory, but memory need not trap him. He joined survivors repairing roads, rebuilding homes. He shared stories sparingly, choosing moments when silence gave way to need. He comforted those haunted by dreams, guiding them to speak, to remember, to heal. Years later, when the war's shadows receded in collective memory, he lived quietly in a small settlement near the Volga. He tended a modest garden, wrote occasional reflections on courage, loss, and the mind's resilience. On cold nights, he would look out toward the distant ruins, now partly reclaimed by earth, now marked by memorials. Sometimes a thin mist rose from the river, reminding him of the fog he once traversed. He felt gratitude for survival, for the chance to bear witness, for the fragile peace. Yet he knew the fog lived within him still, as memory, as awareness that horrors can resurface when least expected. He welcomed it as part of himself, not a curse to banish, but a teacher whose lessons ensured he would never let war's specters return unchallenged. And so, each dawn, as he stepped into the day, he carried with him both the light of new beginnings and the solemn weight of remembrance, walking onward in a world forever changed by what came before.